First of all, thank you for coming into this session. I want to tell you a little bit about the story of what's going to happen. I first discovered this guy just before I moved to the village of Elsbarton. Those of you who know me know I live in the Shire, literally. I live in Northamptonshire, and I live in a small village called Elsbarton. And before then, I lived in another village called Edgerton. Just before I moved to Elsbarton, the only thing I really knew, apart from the fact that it had a co-op and a school, which was the reason we moved there, was I was just flicking through the TV one night in the old days. Anyone who's younger won't remember this, but when TV finished, and you'd flick through channels for something to watch, and you'd have like a choice of 3 or 4, maybe. And I came across a show which was called Tough at the Top. And Tough at the Top was stories of businesses that had done radical things to change the way in which they operate. And one of the shows that came up, I found it by accident, but one of the shows that came up, I started watching it and thought that looks a bit like the place where I'm moving to, which turns out it was Elsbarton. And it was about a third generation shoe factory where people made brogues, very set in their ways, if you know the kind of place I'm talking about, very set in their ways, and were doing something radical to create Kinky Boots. The story, lots of people know, has changed many times in a film, in which you'll see my house, if you watch the film, by the way. So in a film, and also then into the musical, which has been, I've seen on Broadway and in Sydney and various other places around the world, that tells the story of Kinky Boots. But there's only one true story of Kinky Boots, and there's only one person that can tell that story. So I'd ask you to welcome my massive crowd. I'd ask you to welcome onto the stage Mr. Steve Patemen, the real boss in boots. Thank you.
Can you see me? Oh, right, there we are. Well, ladies and gentlemen, and those of you who are yet to make up your mind, thank you for coming on to my little session. It's a little bit out of the difference to what I normally do, but I'm going to make it very, very informal. So if you want to ask a question as I'm going through, please do. I'm scheduled to be on for about an hour. I think you're going, oh no, not crikey, an hour. But if you want to sort of stay or whatever, just please, it's going to be very informal. I'm going to give you a little bit of history about my company, W.J. Brooks from Elsbarton. Thanks to Bill for his wonderful intro. And I'm going to give you a bit of history, what we used to do, how I got into making Kinky Boots, and a few stories on the way of, it normally involved me getting very, very embarrassed. So we're going to go and tell you all those embarrassing stories as well. There's going to be lots of name dropping. There's going to be talks about the musical, about the film and the stage show. So come with the journey with me, and this is the true story of how it actually happened. So just before we do, it's all right, I don't get any further off than this, so just, oh, it was worth doing that just for that, wasn't it? So I'll just take the glasses off. It is me in that picture. It's not photoshopped. It's just when they did the picture, I had to stand on a stage and the cameraman came from that angle upwards. So it took all my wrinkles and my 3 chins away. So it is me. So what was I? Well, I was the managing director of W.J. Brooks. I took over from my father. Let's see if this works. Oh, here we go. And I took over from my father when he retired. So as Bill said, I'm a 3rd generation, 4th if you count it all the way back. It's a bit complicated, but there we go. And we started making shoes and boots in 1889. So that was when the factory was founded. And a guy called W.J. Brooks was the co-founder. And my family and another family called the Coxes took over from Mr. Brooks and started making the shoes. So 100 odd years ago, we were making gentleman's country fashion, which basically is brogues, Oxfords, Gibsons, that type of footwear. And through the period, we went all the way through to the First World War, and then like every shoe factory in the country, we were stopped making ordinary footwear to go in and make army boots and shoes. And here is the picture of the factory. That's the earliest picture we could find, and it was actually one of those char-a-banc trips to the coast. That's the earliest picture we could find, and it hasn't changed much. If you actually saw any of the Trouble at the Top programme, you'll see that it's very, very similar. So that's the factory. We've got a few people in the... Oh, I'm never any good with these things, as you can probably see. Some of the characters that you'll hear about during the talk, this is my father, who, thank goodness, is still alive. Clarice, who was one of my main receptionists. Stan, my second in command. And this young, handsome fellow was me. And we were making, as I say, army boots during the First World War. After the war, what happened? We went back to making gentlemen's country footwear. Your Brogues, Chelsea boots, Derby boots, Gibsons, Oxfords, and all the rest of it. Just got through that when all of a sudden we decided we'd have another world war. So every shoe factory was then put back into making army boots and shoes for the troops. So after that, what happened? Well, we started something called fashion. Fashion became quite good in footwear. And if you look at here, there's some pictures of the old creepers. Anybody remember creepers? Brothel creepers, winkle pickers? Well, we were doing those for the rockers, and that was in the 50s when things were starting to kick off. And we were doing those. The 60s came along, and of course, there was a little group called the Beatles that really kicked off with fashion. And we actually started making some footwear for them back in the early days. A little Chelsea boot with a high Cuban heel, and believe it or not, we called it the Beatle boot. Very original. From the 60s, we went into the 70s. 70s, we went into what we call glam rock. Now, at this point, we'd actually, as a company, started making fashion footwear. We were there with Shelley's of London. They had a shoe shop in Seven Sisters, and all the pop stars of the day used to go there to get their shoes made. And we started making these big, high platforms. And we made for many, many people, such as Elton John, Mud, Slade, those sort of people. Alvin Stardust, we keep quiet. And, of course, our most famous one that we keep extremely quiet about, Gary Glitter. But that was back in the days. So that was in the 70s. So we started doing the 70s fashion. And glam rock went into the 80s. And the 80s is when I really sort of came on the scene. And that was when we had, do you remember the New Romantics? Yeah, all the New Romantics, the fluffy shirts and all the rest. That was when pop music really started to kick in. When we had the electro music and all the synthesizers were coming in. And I used to remember as a kid, 17, 18-year-old, sitting in front of the Top of the Pops on a Thursday evening and going, we made those, we made those. And one of our biggest customers was the Jam. If you remember the Jam, and this is one of the shoes they called the Badger. No idea why, I think probably to do with white stripes, but there we go. And of course, we did all their stage show shoes. And of course, years ago, kids used to follow their leaders, the Jam. They used to go out and dress like them. If they had a band or a group, they used to follow them. We did stuff for Culture Club, we did for David Essex, Adamant, you name it. Through the years, we got really into fashion through Shelley's of London. Also another company in the King's Road, Johnson's, they were another one that we used to do a lot of work with. So what happened was fashion keeps evolving. And as the Jam left into the 80s and everything else, we went into the 90s. And the 90s was when we started to have the new era come along. It was grunge. I don't know if anyone remembers the grunge. It was very industrial. It was very sort of commando style shoes and boots, basic like an army boot. But also the worst thing that happened for any manufacturer in the UK was labels. If you look at your clothing now, or your boots, your shoes, your handbags, your shirts, have nearly all got a label on. We had a nation of people that used to manufacture for shops. All of a sudden, this then changed. Everybody wanted to have Adidas or Yves Saint Laurent or whoever, Gucci, whatever they had to be a label. And this is where a lot of the shoe companies fell away. We were one of the same because we always manufactured for a shop. Johnson's, Shelley's, the big names, people in Carnaby Street. And all of a sudden, everybody wanted this brand name. Now, it's very hard as a small factory to make a brand. We tried and we failed. We were used to making for people who then sold in the shops. So it was a very hard time. It was also a time when the Conservative government had been in power for over 10 years. And just before they actually wanted to put the national election in, they decided what they would do is raise the value of the pound. Now, in business-wise, some of you might realise that as soon as you raise the value of the pound, your goods go up. And we were exporting mainly to Germany and some other countries abroad, but Germany was my biggest market. And when you're exporting, all of a sudden the price rise goes up. All of a sudden your shoes and boots have gone up in price, and you've done nothing other than turn up one day after another. So this put us in a very, very bad position. All of a sudden we were making 4,000 pairs a day. Our German customers would ring up and say, Steve, whatever you do, if you haven't started these orders, stop. And this is what happened. 4,000 pairs a day. It doesn't just start in the clicking room and the leather that comes in, 4,000 pairs, and it comes out that 4,000 pairs. You've got 4,000 pairs in pre-stock, in stock, in leather stock, and then in clicking room, closing room, all the rooms that go through to make a shoe factory work. So it's not just a matter of, for us, turning off a tap. We've still got to make 4,000 pairs a day because we've got all the goods going through, all the workers are there and everything else. But of course, when you've got leather, which is our prime resource really, it's worth a lot of money. As soon as we get it into the factory, we then cut it up into thousands of little pieces, and it's worthless. The next time it is worth something when it comes out the factory door, right at the end of the process, where it is actually a shoe. So with our customers turning off the tap, we were thinking, what the heck are we going to do? Our customers were starting to hit bad times. Their payments started to stop. Everything was sort of slowing down. They didn't want our orders. They were saying, hold off, keep them, wait, let's see if the pound drops again. But unfortunately, it didn't. So we were in one of these terrible, terrible positions. And I remember sitting there one day in my office, and I thought, what the heck am I going to do? I've got 80 people that work for me. What am I going to do? They've got 2 or 3 people in the same family. Do we lay people off? Do we start going to short time? Which is something I never wanted to do. You have to make some cuts. We did a few, but we tried to keep everybody in. We just lost a couple of hours a day just to try and help with the money situation, because our suppliers still needed paying, our wages still needed paying, everything was paying out and we were getting nothing back. And it was just at one of those moments, and probably the lowest point of my day, when I had a phone call. And this phone call was to let me know I'd got bad news. One of our American customers had gone what they call Chapter 13, which is bankrupt. And that was like the final nail in the coffin. I thought, things cannot get any worse than this. And I was sitting there, head in hands, head on the table, thinking, what am I going to do? When all of a sudden, Clarice, the lady you just saw on the picture, rang through and said, Steve, I've got a customer on the phone. I thought, oh, fantastic, a customer. Yeah, a new customer. I said, even better. I said, put them straight through. She said, well, I need to tell you something about this customer. I said, Clarice, there is nothing you need to tell me about this customer. Just put them through. She said, okay, there's a lady called Sue, and I'm putting her through. Very huffy she was, you know, Clarice. I just said, I can deal with it. So this lovely lady came on the phone, very deep voice, and said, I understand you make shoes and boots. I said, yes, we're a shoe factory. Yes, we make shoes and boots. She said, well, I'm after ladies' footwear. I went, oh, that's the only thing we don't do. We don't make ladies, we make unisex, and we do sort of sizes through. But we don't make ladies' footwear. She said, oh, no, I'm not after ladies' footwear. I'm after men's footwear in ladies' sizes. So you're talking to a backstreet boy from Elsbarton, scratching his head, thinking, what the heck's going on here? So I said, well, look, you need to explain to me what you're after. And she said, well, I'm after court shoes, ankle boots, knee boots, and thigh boots in men's sizes. I was like, yeah, Elsbarton boy scratches his head again and go, what for? She said, don't worry about that. Can you do it? I said, well, I think so. It's only a matter of sort of changing a few tools and everything else. Tell me more about it. She says, well, she runs a shop down on Felixstone, down on the south coast. And basically what she does is sell to the cross-dressing transgender community. Has like a changing room shop. So people can go in there, they can kit themselves out with dresses, shoes, underwear, all the bits and pieces. They can even have a makeover day if they want and have a few photos to take home with them. And I was like, wow, I'm really interested in this. You know, I've got nothing else to do in my life. Everything's crashing around me, and there is something that I'm quite interested in. I wanted to know more. I said, but surely there is people out there that are making this footwear already? And she said, well, there is. And one of the problems is it takes me up to 6 to 8 months to get my order. I was going, wow, you know, we're turning around sort of 4,000 pair in under 6 weeks. I said, so delivery is never going to be a problem. I said, are there any other problems I should think about? He said, well, fitting. He says, because these guys that have actually made this footwear have actually taken a lady's shoe and graded the sizes up. So if you're actually grading shoes up, it doesn't work from a size 3 ladies right the way up to a size 13 men's. There's lots of problems. So guys were having to take a lot bigger size just to get the foot in. I said, well, if we're starting from scratch, not a problem, we can sort that. Anything else? And she says, well, the quality. The quality is extremely important. Sometimes these shoes I get are brilliant. Other times they're rubbish. I said, well, we're BS 5750, we're kite mark approved, we have a CE mark. We work for catalogue companies. There's a blast from the past. Catalogue companies, Littlewoods, Grattans, all those sort of people. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen anymore, or very rarely. I said, so they've got very strict quality control. So don't worry about quality, we can cover that one. I said, is there anything else? And she turned around and said, yes, the price. And I was joking. Any manufacturer is governed by the price. And as soon as they went, oh, the price, I thought, okay, how much have I got to get them made for? How cheap do we need them? And she says, if you can get the quality, the fitting, and the delivery, the price doesn't matter. Yay! I was like, whoa, fantastic news. I said, you're joking? She says, no. If you can get all of those things to come together in one place, we'll pay the price. I thought, wow. That little light bulb just switched on and got brighter and brighter. And I thought, I know nothing about this industry. I said, you're one small shop, no disrespect. I said, but are there any others? And she said, well, yeah, I'll give you a list of 10. She gave me a list of 10 people to ring. And I spent another 2 hours ringing around all these companies. And every time I said to them, what do you need? They came up with those 4 things. And I said, if I can get the price, the quality, the fitting, and the delivery, would you buy from me? Yes. I thought, wow. And it just so happened that you just start to talk about it. I said, well, who else wears these boots? Stage productions. Rocky Horror. Has anyone been to the Rocky Horror Show? Everybody goes dressed. There's all these sort of things. There's fetish clubs, there's swingers clubs. There's places that I went to that I never knew existed. And I said, right, I'm interested, I'm on board. I said, leave it with me. And I said, I'm going to do a bit of experimentation. I'm going to have to go back. I'm going to have to see what I can and can't do. Now, this, if you think of the film, is where I differ from Charlie Price. And when they actually came and went, this is the script for the film, I went, Charlie Price is an idiot. You know, I did all the work. Lola just came in and, you know, did in the film. But hence, we'll come on to that later on. So Charlie Price being a bit of an idiot, and that's not me, hopefully. I started to think, how am I going to make these boots and shoes? How am I going to get them to fit? I needed to find out what I can do. How am I going to get them to paper patterns right through to production to selling them in the shop? So I thought, what am I going to do? I had a brainwave. I got out of my office, I put my coat on, I went straight through to the office, the main office. I said, Clarice, I said, I'm out for the rest of the day. I've got some research to do. I've got a job. She goes, okay, see you later. I bet you're off to play golf. No, I'm going out and do some work. So I got into my car and drove from Elsbarton to Wellingborough, where I was living at the time. And I was thinking all the time, I thought, where can I go? And I suddenly thought, got an idea. I drove round to my local corner shop. The corner shop I go to every day to buy my newspaper and half a pound of chocolate raisins. And I walked in, went straight to the back of the shop, to where all the magazines are, top shelf, boom. Big pile of 10 or so magazines, straight up to the counter, plonk these magazines on the counter, and it's then that the blinkers fall off. The girl behind the counter was the same girl that serves me every day with the newspaper and the half pound of chocolate raisins, and there is a pile of 10 porno mags. She looks at me, looks at the magazines, looks at me again, hands on the hip and went, looks like you're in for a hard night. I was going, no, it's a business. Yeah. First time I was truly and utterly embarrassed. I ran out of the shop, just chucked some money at this poor girl and said, oh, if it's any different, I'll see you next time. Got home, spread them all out on the dining room table like a pack of cards, and started taking all the cellophane off the packages. And I went through magazine after magazine after magazine. And yes, guys, it was hard work. But somebody has to do it in the aim of fashion and research. But the thing was, I learned bits and pieces. But what I was interested was from the waist down. And all these magazines were interested in was from the waist up. So I needed something extra. And I just had one of these computer things fitted in my little office upstairs. Never used it. Dial-in modems, do you remember those? People go, no, what's the dial-in? Anyway, so I put the switch on, turned it all on, went away for 3 weeks and came back, and just came a search bar in the middle. And I thought, what do you actually put in a search bar to find out what I'm looking for? Mistake number 2. Never type in fetish footwear. I've never seen a computer to this day that spat, smoked, hissed, and just went into total meltdown. Page after page after page of these sites came up, and I went through site after site. I was amazed. I couldn't believe that there wasn't one sex, there wasn't 2 sexes, there was hundreds of different people doing hundreds of different things. And it was my first lesson of understanding that there's more to life than just the norm. And everything about it was intriguing. So I thought, brilliant. I got loads of ideas. I soon found out that black leather, black patent leather, black PVC, high stiletto heels, all of those sort of things were extremely important. Again, not in the film. Does Charlie Price make something that was only fit for a Romanian peasant or whatever they said on the film, you know, with burgundy, the colour of water bottles, I think they said. I knew that I needed to get sex in a leg. For a man or a woman, it didn't matter. It had to be sexy. Now, the thing that I've got a little bit for heels anyway, I love to see anybody in a heel, whether man or woman, I think they're just fantastic. It alters the whole pitch of the body, the leg, the bum. We're getting too carried away. I'm getting carried away, sorry about that. Anyway, I got some ideas. I thought, I still need to find out more information. I need to know what other things are out there. And I suddenly came up with this thought. If you remember back, and we're talking plus 20 years ago now, newspapers on a Saturday and a Sunday, if you went to the newspapers, in the back of the thing, they had these little adverts. Send a stamped addressed envelope for your free catalogue. It was all sex catalogues and everything else. So I rummaged all the way through, found all the old newspapers and put all these envelopes in and sent them off. Thought nothing of it. And it must have been about a week, a bit later on. I'd just popped home from the factory to let the dog out in Wellingborough, and just coming out the front door when my mate, who's a postman, was walking down the drive towards me. And he goes, Steve, he said, just before you go, he said, I've got some post for you. I said, no, don't worry. I said, I'm in a rush. I've got to get back to the factory. Chuck it through the letterbox. I'll get it later on. He goes, no, I'm here now. He says, I might as well give it to you now. So I said, all right, okay. And it's one of those moments. I put my hand out. And he put his hand out, grabbed hold of a wad of brown envelopes. And I thought, oh, I know what is in these. I know what's in these envelopes. And we had one of those imaginary tugs of war. And I just looked at him. I said, you all right, mate? He goes, yeah. He said, that one on the top. He said, that's bloody good. Get that catalogue. I was like, oh, no. Embarrassment factor number 3. All of these sort of things gave me the information that I needed. And we started to make some samples. It wasn't easy. We had to sort of work around it, but we made some samples. We needed 2 people to do some modelling. The first one I needed was a lady, because I needed a lady to be able to model the ladies. And we soon worked out that we wanted size 3s to size 7s in a lady's size. And then we wanted a men's fit size 7 up to size 13. So in the shoe factory, I went up to the closing room. Now, the closing room was predominantly where all the ladies used to work. I went up and I said, look, guys, I said, I need a model. I said, it's £50, cash in hand, to anybody that will come in and do a bit of modelling. During work time, it's extra bunts. Who's up for it? All the ladies, boom, straight up in the air. Oh, that was easy. Eventually, I honed on one girl called Bev, and she was what I considered to be a good, average, medium type build that would fit the bill, because you want to have somebody that you're going to fit most of it. I thought that was easy. Now the hard bit. I need to find a bloke. Sounds bad, doesn't it? I went downstairs into the lasting room, where the lasting room is where all the big macho men work. They're no disrespect, but some of them were only one step removed from Neanderthal. And I said, guys, I need someone who's going to model these boots for me. I said, it's 50 quid, cash in hand, during work time. Who's up for it? Surprisingly, all the blokes, straight up, hands up in the air. Then all of a sudden, from the back of the room was, if you like, from the film, the Don character, the trade union rep, the person who's the voice for the factory floor. He went, Steve, this modelling, it's nothing to do with what you've just been upstairs and talked to the girls about, is it? I went, hey, you loosely talking, yes. He goes, well, my missus works upstairs. I thought, oh, I've forgotten about that. And he goes, I don't think that you'll find anyone on this factory floor that wants to dress up in high-heel boots. And all the blokes' hands went, shh. Or I'm not going down the working men's club or the band club on a Friday night to be told I'm the one who's in the photographs wearing those high heels. And I went, come on, guys, it's 50 quid. 50 quid's 50 quid. And he goes, no, none of us are going to do it. And then he stood up again, the union guy, and he goes, it's your idea, you bloody do it. So I said, all right then, I will. And now that is the only God's honest truth reason why I'm standing here in the thigh-length boots now. So I became the model for the boots. Now we did all the samples, and Jenny, who's helping me with two of the designs, we had to make some pictures. And this was a time when digital photography was just coming out. We bought a digital camera, and we decided we would take some pictures ourselves. We couldn't afford to get proper models in. We couldn't afford to get a proper studio going. We had to do it ourselves. Bev very kindly did the modelling for the girls, and it was down to me, because we made all the samples in my size 11, to actually do the men's. So I walked into the boardroom, and Jenny said, right, you got your samples over there, try them on. So I said, well, hold on, I better go and get my rugby shorts. So I went back to my office, came back out with my rugby shorts on, standing there, and we tried them on. And she said, oh, what we need you to do, Steve, is go home tonight. You need to learn to walk and stand and pose in these boots. Yeah, easy. Ever so easy to do that. I can do that, no problem. So I took these boots, I went home, right in the middle of our lounge, put all these boots and shoes out. Just as I was getting out my nice, sexy, red thigh-length whip boot, the wife walks in. What the hell do you think you're doing? It's a new project from work. This is what I'm... Yeah, right. I said, well, it is, honestly. She says, well, come on then, put them on. And this is where you see in the film, Charlie Price walks down the catwalk and falls flat on his face. It was taken from this moment in my lounge at home, and I put on this pair of red boots. Sat down, I stood up. And it's one of those, girls, if you, and guys, if you've worn high heels for the first time, it's this, isn't it? The core goes, the ankles start to wiggle in and out, and you're teetering backwards and forwards. And it was on one of those teeters I went too far with the counterbalance, bang, straight down on my face, broke my nose, blood everywhere, and I stood up and I went, I'm all right, honest, I'm all right. And there is the next picture of my wife standing in front of me with her hands outstretched, holding mine, and teaching me to walk in high heels like we taught our son to walk. That's it, left foot forward, now the right one. Eventually, I could actually get there. I was standing, and I could, she said, you've got to stand up properly. She said, bum in, chest out, now, pose. It's like... She says, yeah, we need a bit of work on that, don't we? But you practice the walk. So I practiced that evening. I went back to Jenny the next morning. I said, Jenny, I said, I can do it. I can actually stand in these thigh-length boots, not for long, but I can stand in them, enough to get a couple of pictures. So she said, okay, right. She opened one of the box and pulled out a pair of red Patemen court shoes and says, there you go. Go and put your shorts on, put these on, come back. Went into my office, changed into my rugby shorts, came back, red court shoes on. She looked at me and went, no, that's not going to do. I said, well, I think I'm all right. I've got good legs, haven't I? She goes, well, you've got very good legs, but there's one thing about them. I said, what's that? She says, they're hairy. I said, well, yeah, I'm a bloke. I've got hairy legs. No, you're missing the point. When the guys want to see pictures of these shoes and the models, they want her to look like Cinderella, not like Les Dawson from A Night Out in the Northern Club. I said, you've got to shave your legs. Now, we're talking 20 plus years ago. Shaving your legs then was a little bit out there. Nowadays, we do all this manscaping, don't we? Well, some of us do. where they shave everything, chest, armpits, legs, everywhere. And I thought, I still play rugby. You know, what am I going to be like when I go into the changing rooms and there is me standing there with no hair on my legs? I thought, business first, I'm going to do it. I was quite intrigued anyway, I must admit. But anyway, that's another story. So I went home and I went up to the bathroom. The first time I shaved my legs. Now, I'd seen how you girls do it. I'd studied it. I went straight to the bath, ran the water, nice level of water. I went to her cabinet, took out a bath salts thing, one that's been there for donkey's years. She'd never used it. Put the whole lot in. Didn't realise it's there for special occasions. Used a whole lot. And of course, this water turns a lovely, fragrancy, opal type colour, and its smell was coming off, and I thought, well, that's quite nice. I got my loofah out on the side, because I'd done a bit of study. I put the loofah on the side. I got some shaving cream. I put that on the side of the bath, and I went to my cupboard and got out 10 Bic razors. I slowly lowered myself into this bath water, and as I went down into this bath water, that feeling of dread comes across you. And then I got out my loofah. Now, guys, keep with me here. I soon realised what you have to do. You have to exfoliate. Yeah, I got all the words, mate. Exfoliate. I was going to exfoliate my legs, so I rubbed them all over with this loofah. And I thought, great, I'm ready. Soak the legs, get them nice and supple, everything ready to go. Shaving cream. Started to apply it to my leg. But I noticed how you girls do it. I got my toe balanced on the top of the tap. You know, and I started this process. I was like a surgeon going in for the first stroke. The big razor struck my leg and went, doing about an inch at a time. 3/4 of an hour later, I rose from this bath water like the phoenix from the ashes, and all of a sudden, the first thing I realised was my legs were cold, really cold. You shave your legs for the first time, it's like, ooh, it was quite nice. I was like, yeah, I'm quite getting into this. I looked at the bath water, and it looked like someone had shaved a bear. And there was blood and hair everywhere. And I thought, easy, no problem there. So I got on, and I went into the bedroom, and I looked at the mirror, and I went, what the hell is that? All of a sudden, a bloke who's never shaved his legs has shaved his leg, the hair is gone, and my legs are brilliant white. Whiter than white that I could ever imagine. I looked like an albino chicken from Kentucky Fried Chicken that had been rejected. I thought, what am I going to do? And then I remembered. What I call, ladies, harvest time. Just in spring, when you give that first shave of the year, you then think, oh, my legs are... I went and got this stuff called duotan. Do you remember that? Years and years ago, it's a fake tan. And as a bloke, I went back to her cabinet, opened the cabinet, took out this duotan. That's the stuff. Instant tan. Brilliant. Straight down, legs, ankles, knees, the whole lot. Nothing happened. Obviously not put enough on, have I? Now, I'm standing here naked. You're ahead of me here. Standing here naked, and I started to go back down again to put another coat on. And things that sort of shouldn't hang out. And it was a bit like running a roll paper brush, you know. As I went down, I was getting a coating of this fake tan. I put on this second coat, still nothing had happened. I thought, it's about time I actually had a look at the instructions, because us blokes, we never read the instructions. All right. Takes 10 to 15 minutes to develop. Fast-acting tan. I thought, oh no. It was in date. It's nothing. All of a sudden, there was this warmth and started to erupt from my nether regions. And I kid you not, I looked at my legs standing there in front of this mirror, and it was as though I was changing colour instantly. I'd gone from white to sunburnt to tan, dark tan, ebony. I was like, oh my God, what do I do? I jumped back in the bath, and I was there with this loofah for another 45 minutes, trying to sandpaper this tan off. And that was my first true experience of actually doing my self-tanning. But I've got a few tricks, because I've done it numerous times now, and the areas that always have a problem are your knees and your ankles, ladies, aren't they? Yeah, the dry parts of your skin. If you put too much on, get a little cotton bud, one of the stick things, run that round the heel where all the creases are, that takes it out, you have a nice tan. And on your knees, one of those little round circular pads, just give them a bit of a polish on your knees and you'll have the most perfect tan. You can take that home, that's free from me tonight. So what happened next? Well, it was a matter of circumstance. Everything I have done has been a door. As one opens, another one's opened as well. I then had an interview with the Financial Times on television, for the newspaper, and they basically wanted to know what was going on in the shoe trade. The shoe trade had gone down like this. We were losing factories everywhere, and I basically said, I've got one idea. If by Christmas I can't get my factory back up and running, I said a 115-year-old factory will close, 80 people will lose their jobs. And the interviewer said, what's your idea? I said, Kinky Boots for men and women. The next day, they printed this article, Kinky Boots for men, being made by Steve Patemen in Ilsbarton. The whole shoe trade in the Northamptonshire went mad. I was instantly called Kinky Boots. I was, but that's how the television program called Trouble at the Top got involved. And they approached me and they said, what we want you to do is we want to film you. We want to film you from the transition of starting these boots and shoes right up until you do the final presentation. Now, bearing in mind, this was like 3 to 4 months in, so we had to reenact everything for the television that we'd done to start with. So we had to reenact that, and the last part of our story was going to be erotica. Does anyone remember the erotica exhibitions that used to be held at the big place down, I can't think of the name of it now, Olympia. And that's where I was going to launch this brand called Divine to the public, to the world. Divine, I chose that name because there was a fantastic person that I used to follow, Divine, who was a cross-dressing transgender pop artist. He was brilliant. So we used Divine as the name for our brand of shoes. We filmed this thing with the BBC for 9 months. 9 months, and it took over 90 hours of videotape to make this 40-minute program. This 40-minute program was going to go out on a Wednesday night. There you go. It's Wednesday the 24th of February at 9:50 on BBC Two. Not a good time, not a good station. But as they started to put the track together, they realised they got a bit of a story. There was going to be 6 programs in the series, and I was going to be number 3. But as they started to cut the program, they realised that there's a boss that goes into the sex trade, shaves his legs, learns to walk in high heels, and goes to an erotica exhibition. And it was like, it had everything. Who says sex doesn't sell? So they said, right, you're going up to number 2. Now, number 2, I thought number 2 same as number 3. And what happens? They then have to put the voiceover to the actual tracks. And at the time, they had this very famous actor, who is extremely famous now, Robert Lindsay. Robert Lindsay was going to do the voiceover for my program. And he is extremely good. He was very, very top of the list in the BBC at that time, 20 odd years ago. He's even bigger now. And they sort of held him in, they sat him down in front of the computer, they started playing the recording, and all he had to do was read the script to the video. Apparently, I wasn't there, but 10 minutes into it, he went, that's it, stop the video, I need to talk to you. And they go, oh no, we've upset Robert Lindsay. Robert Lindsay is the god of the BBC at this point. And he goes, this is magic. He said, this is your lead program. On Robert Lindsay's say-so, we were then transferred from number 2 in the series to number 1. Oh, you don't want to see those yet. Sorry about this. Going the wrong way. Oh, that's the slide I was looking for. I beg your pardon. And there were 6 programs in the series, and the first one at that time was going to be Vogue magazine being launched into Russia. All of a sudden, we had gone from being number 3 to being the lead program. Lead programs, what's that mean? It means that you have an office down in London in Shepherd's Bush. I had a team of 12 people doing all my press and publicity. All of a sudden, I was in front of every TV magazine, every Radio Times, TV Quick. What Bill was talking about earlier on, when everybody used to have to read the newspaper to find out what was on the pick of the day. Pick of the day was the Kinky Boot Factory, Steve Patemen, the man who shaves his legs and wears kinky boots. As I say, this programme went out on a BBC Two at 9:50, and normally what would do was this, as a launch programme, would take 1.25 million viewers, which is still quite good. Our programme that went out with a few trailers and the stuff in the newspaper, we took 5 million viewers on that one night. That's how interested people were about what was going on. Now that is incredible. So all of a sudden, I went from not being known to being sort of a semi-famous person. I was walking down streets and people were coming, oh, Kinky Boots, how you doing? And that's how instantly the BBC changed my life. Oh, sorry, that. That's not there. There's a couple of shots there from the filming. There's the director here and as the cameraman. This was actually filmed in Dusseldorf. Our shoe factory, we went to Dusseldorf to sell our shoes, not Milan as they do in the film. They had to change so many bits and pieces. But we went to Dusseldorf. Obviously, here's a few of the pictures that I had to do some of the modelling. And as there is always a little perk for the boss, because when you're doing a photo shoot, somebody's got to do a little bit of adjustment, and I thought it might be an idea to be that person. There's Robert Lindsay. For those of you who don't recognise him, Robert Lindsay, Citizen Smith, do you remember that programme a long time ago? That's what put him on his road to fame. And I'm still in touch with him, which is amazing. This is a picture of us at Olympia. So the BBC followed us all the way to Olympia. And once you've done that, you actually then get into a very sort of famous sort of thing, is that once you've been on telly, you get invited to do other things. My programme, The Trouble at the Top, was on the BBC. The BBC also has something called, goes, as it says, all over the world. My father was on holiday in New Zealand, and he walked into a bar and was sitting there when all of a sudden this bloke tapped him on the shoulder and goes, your name's Richard Patemen, isn't it? He goes, yeah. He goes, I saw your son on telly, the Kinky Boot Man. That's the power of the BBC, the press, how it gets about. Not only that, it then went across to Europe, and I got a phone call from a company in Holland, and they said, we have just seen this wonderful program about how you changed your factory and you're making the Kinky Boots. We have shops in Holland, in Amsterdam. I went, oh, wow, Amsterdam. Never been to Amsterdam. This could be good. You know, the sex capital of the world as it was at this point. And I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. He says, we want to take your goods exclusively. I went, even better. I thought, fantastic. He said, we've even got one of the top Dutch porno stars who's going to work with us and promote your goods. I went, even better. And basically, they said, right, we're going to buy a load of samples, which they did. We shipped them out, and they said, we need to do a photo shoot with Kim. And what we're going to do is we would like you to come over and meet her and do some photos with her. I went, oh, I don't know about that. I said, oh, go on then, I'll come over. She said, bring your stuff with you, because we want you to wear some of the boots. We want you to wear some leather gear, because we did lots of other sorts of bits and pieces. We've now added a catalogue. We put whips and chains and handcuffs and all this sort of leather gears and everything, a bit of bondage stuff to go with it. All very nicely done, I must admit. And they said, bring it over with you, and we'll pick you up from the airport, and we'll go and meet Kim. So just after this programme had gone out, I could still walk into a pub and people would know me, or you've got a face that's quite familiar. And I turned up at Luton with my suitcases, 2 suitcases full of this gear to go on this photo shoot. Went straight up to the desk, and I spoke to the lady behind the desk, and I said, look, I've got 2 cases, they're a bit heavy. And she goes, no problem, this is pre-9/11 and everything else. Just go over to the heavy baggage, and they'll just put it through a conveyor belt and scan it, and then you're away. I thought, oh, brilliant, no worries. Went over, put the first suitcase on, second suitcase. They go through the conveyor belt. Just as the first suitcase is going through this conveyor belt, it stops. I thought, oh no. He came back out, went back in again, went out the other side. The guy standing there took it off the conveyor and put it on the side. The same happened for the second bag. And I thought, oh no, I've just remembered. There's handcuffs, whips, chains, PVC, leather boots, leather coats, leather jackets, you name it, it's in there. And he took the second case off, put it on the side, right? Whose cases? Mine. Come through. Can you tell me what's in these bags? I said, well, nothing really. Some boots, some clothing, and some accessories. He goes, do you want me to open these cases here? No. He said, could you tell me exactly what's in it? I said, well, yeah, there's some thigh-length boots, some leather jeans, some trousers, some bras and tops, and, you know, handcuffs and whips. And he goes, exactly. He says, we can see it's X-rayed. He says, now, Steve, get your gear and bugger off. He says, don't do it again. And he'd seen me on the telly, and he just made me sweat. He says, go and get a beer from me. And that's how it was. The people just accepted what I was doing, and it was just a lovely rite of passage. So I went through, and I went up and I met up with these people. We did the photo shoot in a place called the Casa Rossa. If anyone's been to Amsterdam, it's one of the main live theatres. During the day, it's an ordinary theatre. In the evening, it's one of these live sex theatres. And these guys had hired it for the day to do our photo shoot. Oh, and there you go. There is some of the pictures that we did. Kim Holland is the model. Very, very nice lady. Never met a porno star before. Really, really nice. And she runs lots of girls and, you know, the shop windows and magazines and clubs and everything else. So my other claim to fame is that I am actually... Oh, it's gone again. Sorry. I'm actually a centre page in one of these sex magazines. So that's my other claim to fame, which my friends seem to like. There's a picture of Kim, and obviously myself. So what happens with these is once you started doing one thing, everything leads on to another. And when you've done those television programs, you get passed from one to another. And it wasn't long after that, all of a sudden I had a call from a company called Harbour Pictures. They're based down in London, down by the river. And they said, we've seen the Trouble at the Top programme, and Steve, we would love to do a film of your story on Trouble at the Top. I said, brilliant, yeah. I said, yeah, that sounds great. He said, well, we have to warn you that only 1 in 10 film will ever make the silver screen. I said, doesn't matter, I'm interested. So we started talking, we got involved, and we did all the bits and pieces. And I went down to meet these guys. And we actually started to get involved, and the film started to get to be made. At the time, there was a film that they were making already. It was called The Calendar Girls. I don't know if anyone remembers The Calendar Girls, the WI, where they did the naked calendar. Well, that was their first film, and they wanted mine to follow on as the second film. And they very kindly invited me down to Leicester Square for a black tie event, walked down the red carpet, straight up, you know, with all the stars, the cameras were flashing and everything else. And there was myself in my black tie, walking down the red carpet. My moment of fame, I thought, yeah, I could get used to this. Just as I got towards the end of this runway, was this woman in a big candy striped dress, hogging my limelight. So I walked up to her and I tapped her on the shoulder and I said, excuse me, I said, you wouldn't mind just moving so I could get in, so I can have my photo taken? And she said, oh, I'm ever so sorry, and turned around, looked at me, and I said, thank you very much. And my missus went, you twat. I said, well, what? Don't you know who that was? No. Helen Mirren. I was like, oh, no. I'm no good with famous faces or famous names. To me, everybody's the same. And I put my foot in it all the time. We watched the film. We watched how it went ahead. After the film, we were invited to see the sponsors. The sponsors for our film and for Calendar Girls was a very small American company called Silver Creek Pictures, probably better known to you guys as Walt Disney. They had a big headquarters on Hammersmith Roundabout, and I was invited down there to help sell the story to make the film. I turned up with my suitcase full of thigh-length boots, and we were shown into the boardroom. Now, the boardroom is massive, probably as big as this room, with the most humongous boardroom table. And on this boardroom table was porcelain models of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, about 2 feet high. They didn't take too kindly that I draped all my thigh-length boots all over these models for when we did the talk. But what happened, they loved the story, they loved what it was all about, they loved how the inclusion, the diversity, everything about it, and the story about a boss trying to save his firm. They gave us £9 million to make Kinky Boots. Now, in making films, that's not a lot, when you consider how much a James Bond takes. I can't really compare my film to James Bond, but it's worth it. So 9 million to make this film. When it was actually done and dusted, the cost with all the pre and post production and all the advertising and everything was 45 million. So just 9 million of it went to make this film. So it's incredible. You must think about how these big blockbusters are actually done. So that's a lot of money 20 years ago to make a film. So it started being filmed, and here's one of the shots from outside the back of Barton Church, which is a very poignant part in the film. Oh, we're going the wrong way again. Who played the parts? Well, who played Charlie Price in the film, who played me, was Joel Edgerton. Joel Edgerton, lovely, lovely guy, Australian. When they told me, Steve, you're being played by an Australian, I went, you're joking. An Australian playing an Earls Barton boy. What about the accent? Give him his due. I did a 3-hour tape telling Joel exactly how a pair of shoes is made, how we talk, how we have the local Bartonisms. Ain't, shan't, never gonna. It's all part of our lovely characterful sort of speech in Earls Barton. And he did a great job. I can't even tell he's Australian when you listen to the film. So there's one good thing. So I was played by an Australian. And the script was pretty good. I was quite happy with the script, apart from the fact that in the first 5 pages, my father dies. Now, my father's still alive, as I said earlier on. And it was just after we'd signed the contract with the film company, I decided I ought to go and tell the old man that we're going to have a film about Kinky Boots. And I gave him the script. I said, Dad, you can read this. And he goes, oh, brilliant. He says, I bet I've got a big part. I went, yes and no. After page 5, you die. Well, bloody hell. And there's this lovely part in the film where my father dies. It sounds awful. My father dies, and they dig an actual grave in the church in Earls Barton. We had to get permission from the Diocese of Peterborough, from the bishop, to actually dig in consecrated ground. And I decided that during the film, I wanted myself and my family to have cameo roles. And I went to the directors and said, I'd like my dad to have a cameo role. And they went, we've got a fantastic idea. How would your dad like to be at his own funeral? I said, brilliant. I said, fantastic. Yeah, let's go for it. So I went to Dad. I said, look, would you like to do a cameo role? You can dine out on this for years to come. He goes, what have I got to do? I said, you're going to be a mourner at your own funeral. Oh, I'm bloody doing that. He says, I ain't going to do that. He says, I don't want to tempt fate. And that he never did. He now regrets it deeply, because what a story to be able to tell. But in the film, when they actually do this, a very poignant moment, Charlie Price steps forward from the crowd, holds his hand out over the coffin and drops this brown brogue down in slow motion onto the top of the coffin, and it hits the top of the coffin. And apparently that is a shoe tradition. It isn't. It's never been a shoe tradition. When I die, it's going to start a new tradition, I can tell you. And it ain't going to be a brogue, it's going to be a pair of stiletto heels, I can tell you that. But the next time that my father actually saw the film was at the premiere in Leicester Square. We sat there in amongst all the celebrities in the circle. And this lovely moment comes where they parade through Earls Barton village. Everybody thought it was a real funeral in the town, in the village. They all turned out on the streets. They thought someone famous is being buried. Look, the cameras are here. So they got up to there. The film was being shown. It was live in the theatre in Leicester Square. My dad's sitting there and he's getting a bit edgy because he knows this is the funeral scene. And Charlie steps forward, hand out, boom, and this brogue drops slowly, bang, straight onto the top of the coffin. My old man goes, ow, that bloody hurt. I said, shut up, Dad, shut up. Embarrass me. But it's one of those stories that actually happened. They filmed lots of things in Earls Barton. They filmed it in Northampton. There's some things in the film. People go, we've been to Earls Barton. We'd like to come and see where these films were done. That hill behind the church is an amazing medieval mound. And it's got a great big moat that goes around it. But Charlie walks off with Lauren and goes and sits by a lake. There isn't any lakes in Earls Barton, because that's the Serpentine down in Hyde Park. So people would get these understandings of everything else. There's also the bits, I don't know if you've seen the film, but if you've seen the film, where there's that lovely restaurant that's in Northampton, where Charlie and Lola and Lauren go at several points during the thing. People say, where the hell is that? We've scoured Northampton for that. Well, you won't find it because that's down in Covent Garden. So people's perceptions are different. The warehouse scene was filmed in Earls Barton. The Milan show was filmed in Canary Wharf. And you know that catwalk bit where Charlie walks down the catwalk with all the models and it's Milan and everything else, filmed in the most disgusting, dirtiest warehouse in the East End of London. And if you actually panned down and lifted the lights, you would have seen mice and rubbish all running around. There's all these ladies in Gucci and everything and Armani sort of sitting there. The power of television. Lola's Club was the Too Much Club over in Soho. Lots and lots of wonderful settings, and I was able to be at a lot of the filming, which is quite amazing. So we did all of that. Here's a few of the pictures. There's obviously myself and my mother and my father in Charlie's office in Lokes. It was actually filmed in Lokes in Northampton. For those of you who know Northampton, there is a fault in the film because when Lola first comes to the factory, she comes in a car from the left to the right on the screen. When she leaves, she goes from the right to the left. It's a one-way street. So only Northampton people know that, but that's a fault in the film. They had a vehicle sort of done up with the Price and Sons, and there's myself sitting in one of the director's chairs. And these are some of the film stills from Northampton Town Centre, Sarah Jane Potts, and obviously Chiwetel Ejiofor. It's taken me 20 years to be able to learn to say his name. We all used to call him Chewy because nobody could pronounce his name. Now, Chewy is the most wonderful person I've met, and he will not answer now to the name Chewy. Now he's an Oscar winner for 12 Years a Slave and Salt and Serenity and all these other wonderful films. If you don't call him Chiwetel, he will not answer you. Goes with the territory, I suppose. Lovely guy, and he did all his own singing and everything else. And he was actually about 12 people I've actually met. Oh, sorry, we've got problems with this. I think I'm either a bit quick for it. There we go. There's some pictures we took from the upper mezzanine floor in Canary Wharf, so you can actually see how they did the stage productions part of it. And there's a picture of Charlie walking down the catwalk. This is my cameo role with my father and my family in front of All Saints Church in Northampton Town Centre, and a few stills from the after-show party. After-show party was filmed in a club in Soho. At the time it was called the Titanic, which went down well. Bum bum. And when you actually go there, we were led into the red carpet area. We watched the film. We were then carred to Soho, where we had this party. As a so-called celebrity, I had my own runner, my own photographer. I had a reporter with me, and we went round as like an entourage, because you have to be introduced to all these people. Now, I'm no good with names and anything, so I didn't know who the heck I was talking to. And at one point, I was thrust into the arms of this gorgeous lady, supermodel, Sophie Anderton. She'd just come out of the jungle. I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. And it was a Beauty and the Beast picture. She looked awful, I looked fantastic. No, it's the other way around. But by this time I'd had too many beers. I was sweating like anything. You can't really see from this photo, but that was a very light shirt, which was extremely dark. Poor girl, she had this picture thrust upon her with me sort of going, oh, I fancy you, I love you. You know, so very embarrassing, but we get used to that. Lots of other people that we met along the way. Don, who was in the film, was no other than Nick Frost. Everybody that was in the film has actually gone on to do some wonderful, wonderful stuff as well. So, yeah, this is on the red carpet. My son, who is now 26. Sorry? 5. He's 26. And, of course, one or two of the other celebrities as well. This is my son now. So you can see, I mean, I stand around about 6'1", so you can see how big he's got. When he was at school, obviously, he was known as the Kinky Boots son. Soon after that, we then got rumoured that we would actually be making a musical from the film, and a lady called Cindy Lauper and Harvey Fernstein decided they would take it on board and make the musical. From that, I think most people have heard of it. It really did fantastic news. It was down here in the Adelphi in London for a good long time, as well as being on Broadway. And these are some of the pictures I took when I used to come down to London quite often. The musical, for me, is fantastic. I prefer the film because I think it tells more of the story. The musical is like a snapshot of actually what goes on as a musical is a film. For me, the best characters are the angels, the backing dancers for Lola. And I've loved the film. I was lucky enough to see it loads of times in London. The first time I saw it was one of the dress rehearsals, and I had never seen it before. I went in and I sat there with these PR girls who were like showing me around London for the day, and I've never ever cried in my life at a film that I can remember. And there is one song in this film, in this musical, that makes me cry, even now, and I've seen it goodness knows how many times. And it's a song called Not My Father's Son. And it's all about expectations of a father about his son or his daughter, in this case his son. And the same with Lola as being, you know, his dad wanted him to be a boxer. My dad wanted me to be in the shoe trade, and Charlie was going off to London to go advertising. It is a very, very emotional point in the thing, and it really hit home for me as many times. The after show party, well, we always have, this was at the Connaught Rooms in London. And yeah, I was lucky enough to take lots of pictures as we go through. Lots of people that we've met along the way. Did actually get to meet Cyndi Lauper, although she's harder to meet than the Queen. She has more of an entourage. You have to book an appointment, and you only get an appointment if you've been invited. All the other stars of the film and the musicals you could go and meet, but Cyndi Lauper is a little bit different. And this lady was one of the original Broadway stars, and she heard about the film and the musical and where it was from. So when she came to London, she came to see us in Barton, and went and actually toured around where all the sites and learnt a lot about the film. So things have moved on. Yes, it was now released. It went out. We started the tour in Northampton. It came back to Northamptonshire where we had the film. And from then on, I've been doing lots of things. And I've actually published a book, the true story of how it all came about. All the wonderful tales. I have not even touched on all the wonderful, funny stories that have happened. I hope I've given a bit of an insight. But the book is available. You can get it online, or you can get it from me this afternoon. Special price of £10. No problem. But things keep going on every now and again. Just as I think everything stopped, something else comes along. I did a television programme with Steph McGovern the other week about how shoes are made. It just keeps, it's a story that keeps giving. A few of the little characters that we've got, we've even been on some of the quiz shows, Kinky Boots. And this lovely one from Netflix, very comical. They made sure that the Puss in Boots was dead above Kinky Boots. I mean, what a great thing. And I actually took the name of our book. I thought, what a great name for a book. That's why it's called Boss in Boots. I've also done some work with other television companies from across the world. And, of course, I keep going off and telling all my stories. You can indeed. But, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to finish there. If anybody would like any questions, you're more than welcome to ask them now, or I'm going to be around. I've got another session to do later on. But if you'd like to know anything or ask a question now, I'll be more than happy to answer. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm sorry if I've kept you too long. Thank you very much indeed for listening. Thank you.